This is the story of the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. For millions of years it flourished in beauty and power beyond imagining. And this is the story of how it destroyed itself, utterly and forever. It was not brought down by fire. It was not conquered in war. No rival fleet ever breached its heart. This civilization was undone by something far quieter and infinitely more terrible. It was undone by its own wanting. They were the Aeldari, long before mankind first crawled from the mud of ancient Terra. This elegant and ageless people already ruled the stars. They were proud and they were brilliant, and they believed themselves eternal. When the Old Ones and the soulless star gods tore the young galaxy apart in the terrible war in heaven, it was the Aeldari who rose from the ashes to inherit all that remained. The galaxy, quite simply, became theirs. They were a psychic people, their minds reaching down into the unseen realm beneath reality. They were beautiful and gifted, and so long-lived as to be almost immortal, watching the empires of lesser races rise and crumble like the turning of the seasons. A single Aeldari might live for more than 1,000 years, and in that time master 100 different arts, sciences, and philosophies. To such beings, the proudest achievements of humanity would have seemed the clumsy fumbling of children. Their dominion stretched across worlds beyond counting, and all of it was bound together by the webway, a vast and secret labyrinth of tunnels running through unreality itself, where no clumsy enemy could ever hope to follow them. They had no rivals worthy of the name. They had no equals anywhere among the stars. They wanted for nothing, and they feared nothing at all. And slowly, across the long and idle centuries, that absolute mastery became the seed of their doom. Their cities were not built, but grown, sung into being from living wraithbone that answered their very thoughts and desires. Tireless machines and bound spirits labored in their place, so that no Aeldari need ever lift a hand in toil. There was no hunger among them, no disease, no poverty, and no death that they had any true cause to fear. One by one, they had conquered every hardship that a mortal species can face, until at last not a single challenge remained to them. And a people who have conquered absolutely everything soon make a terrible discovery. They find that they have nothing left to strive for, no struggle to give their endless days meaning, no purpose to fill the vast and echoing emptiness of eternity. With every need met and every danger long since banished, only one frontier remained unexplored: sensation itself. The pursuit of feeling, of experience, of ever greater and stranger pleasures became the last great adventure left to a deathless and restless race. They began to live only for the next experience, and then for the one that lay beyond it. Cults devoted to pleasure took root among the idle and the immortal, and each one strained to reach a sensation sharper and more exquisite than the last. What had begun as the very highest art slowly curdled into raw appetite. Excess hardened into a philosophy, Beauty and cruelty bled into one another until they could no longer be told apart, and at last nothing whatsoever remained forbidden to them. Like a fever burning its way through a body, these cults of excess spread outward from world to world and palace to palace, until they had touched every corner of the vast Aeldari Empire, a civilization of living gods drowning slowly in its own delights. There was no depravity too great and no indulgence too dark for a people who believed themselves forever beyond all consequence. They gorged themselves upon every sensation that the flesh and the mind could offer, and still, always, they hungered for more. Yet not every one of them was blind to the danger. A few, the wise and the watchful, saw the shadow gathering over their people and understood at last what it truly was. They raised their voices in warning, and they begged their kin to stop. They were mocked. They were dismissed as timid fools who simply did not understand true enlightenment. And so, seeing that the empire could no longer be saved, these few made the hardest choice of all. They chose to abandon it and to flee. Some among them, who would come to be called the Exodites, turned their backs upon the empire entirely. They departed for harsh and primitive worlds at the very edge of the stars, choosing a hard and humble exile over a beautiful and certain ruin. Others gathered their households aboard immense starships as large as moons, sealed whole living worlds within their hulls, and sailed away into the empty dark. But the vast majority remained behind, certain to the last that they were the pinnacle of all creation. For here is a truth that the Aeldari, in all their genius, had chosen to forget. Every living soul is a candle burning in the warp, that unseen ocean of thought and raw emotion beneath the skin of reality. And the souls of the Aeldari burned like suns. Every ecstasy that they chased, every agony that they inflicted, every dark and unspeakable indulgence poured its raw psychic energy down into that immaterial sea, drop by drop and hour by hour, for thousands upon thousands of unheeding years. And in that swelling ocean of stolen feeling and boundless excess, something monstrous slowly began to take shape. A new god was forming there in the dark, drawn together from the very substance of the Aeldari soul, and it was gestating. It was born of their desire, and it fed upon their sin, and it grew for long millennia entirely unseen and unfelt, a stain spreading slowly beneath the skin of the universe, swelling ever larger upon the endless feast that its makers so freely provided. Without ever once suspecting the truth, the whole of the Aeldari race was laboring to give birth to its own executioner. And then, at the very height of their decadence, the thing that they had made finally opened its eyes. Slaanesh, she who thirsts, the dark prince of pleasure and of pain. It came screaming into being in a single, dreadful heartbeat, and the psychic scream of its birth crossed the entire breadth of the galaxy in that very same instant. That scream tore the living souls straight out of the bodies of very nearly every Aeldari that it touched. Not thousands of them, not millions, but billions upon billions of souls, snuffed out and devoured in the space of a single breath. Whole worlds fell utterly silent between one heartbeat and the next. Their people dropped dead where they stood, in their palaces and their gardens and their halls of pleasure, their bright spirits dragged screaming into the maw of the newborn god. An empire that had ruled the stars for longer than the human species has even existed was gutted, hollowed out, and left dead in a single moment of cosmic agony. And where the beating heart of that empire had been, reality itself simply gave way. A wound was torn open in the very fabric of the galaxy that has never once healed in all the long ages since. A howling rift of raw and naked chaos, hundreds of light years across, glaring out into the void. Men would one day name it the Eye of Terror. In the span of a single breath, the greatest and most ancient civilization the galaxy had ever produced was all but wiped from existence. Its glory, its beauty, and its endless promise, all of it swallowed whole. But not, quite, entirely. A scattered handful had survived the cataclysm, and each different way of surviving would harden, in time, into a different way of living. The great craft worlds, those moon-sized ships that had fled before the end, drift the cold void to this very day. Their people now live out their long lives in iron discipline, walking rigid and joyless paths of thought and duty, forever terrified that the smallest indulgence might one day damn them exactly as it damned their ancestors. And each of them carries a spirit stone, for they had learned the single cruelest lesson in all the galaxy. Any Aeldari who dies without protection will have their soul torn free and dragged down screaming into the warp, there to be devoured for all eternity by the very god that their own kind created. The Exodites, meanwhile, endure still upon their primitive maiden worlds, living hard and simple lives beneath open skies, having deliberately chosen to forget the terrible glory from which they came. It is a poorer life by far, but it is a life that survives. And in the lightless, labyrinthine heart of the webway, within the vast and cruel dark city that is called Camorra, there dwell the Drukhari. These are the ones who never repented of anything, and who fled the fall only to carry its sins down into the shadows. They cling to the old and terrible pleasures even now, and to pay the price of them, to hold their own damnation at bay, they must drink deep of the suffering of other living things, or else feel their own immortal souls being slowly and agonizingly drunk away. 10,000 long years have passed since that dreadful day, and in all of that time, nothing at all has truly changed. The God that they made still hungers, it still thirsts on without any end, and the Aeldari, scattered and broken, still run from it. They are a dying species now, their numbers dwindling with every century that passes, forever hunted across the stars by the very doom that they themselves conjured out of their own boundless desires. There will be no rescue for them, and no end to the chase. They had once possessed everything that any people could ever dream of wanting: eternity, beauty without limit, the endless stars themselves laid out before them like jewels, and they threw every last piece of it away, not with weapons, but with wanting. So the next time that you try to imagine how a great civilization truly meets its end, do not think first of fire, or of famine, or of some conquering army at the gate. Remember instead the Aeldari. Sometimes what comes for the mighty is only their own reflection. They had everything, and in the end it was not enough. So let me leave you with a single question to carry away with you. What would you have done if you had been given everything? Think on it carefully, for they too were quite certain that they knew the answer.